So my question to you is, I'm sure in the initial stages, you just are so conflicted and you wonder what's going to happen in life, especially at such a young age. What are some of the qualities, or what are some of the circumstances, for example, support? What takes you through those tough times, and what lessons can we learn for what many are going through today?
We all go through things, sometimes physical, sometimes mental, sometimes both, many times over. And, I like to look at it as a gap. And there's a couple authors that talk about this. Things happen to you and you have a decision on how you respond to those things. And it's in that gap that defines who you are. And if you look historically at people who have been through challenges, even much more than probably most of us have experienced civil wars, and I mean just really horrible things, that those individuals tend to be those people that are striving, that are innovating. I mean, I think as a society we've done a huge disservice to a lot of the next generation by making everything easy. And we talk about helicopter parenting and all these things. Now, I don't have kids. I like to say teaching college for 8 years was, those were my kids, right? But I think, it's cliche, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And using that as fuel in your life, whether it's cancer or a car accident or whatever it is, those are the things that can fuel you and don't have to define you. And those are choices. Frankly, I don't have any magic formula.
Could you now share with us the events that led to the founding of Hera Hub? And I know that peacock in the background has a significance, so I'll let you tell your own story, how the entrepreneurial blood flows in your veins.
Yeah, there you go, nicely said. um, so yes, it comes back to the peacock. So as I mentioned earlier, my father's been a small business owner all his life. He owns a very non-sexy, non-tech retail floor covering business in San Luis Obispo County here in California. Um, and my mom has been an entrepreneur most of her life as well, or an artpreneur, as I like to call it. And she was and very much is into animals. So I grew up with a ton of animals. We had a couple acres. We had peacocks, horses, ducks, you name it, we had it. And that was my first entrepreneurial venture. It was not a lemonade stand, but selling peacock feathers from Mr. Peabody, who shed his feathers every fall. So my claim to fame is I made $80 standing in front of JJ's Market selling peacock feathers for $1 at age 8. So yes, for me growing up, that's why I said before, going to college was not, that just, it wasn't something that my parents emphasized. They're like, if you want to go, great. If not, great, totally fine. So it was, how can you be scrappy? What can you do to make money and figure it out? So I was kind of always hustling to make money when I was growing up, doing whatever odd jobs I could do. And then, through my car accident, was employed, continued to, after I recovered, went back to the company I was working for a bit, had a couple jobs, for startup companies, and that's typical to get laid off. A company sells, they run out of money. I mean, that's the name of the game. That's what you're signing up for. So it was that third layoff at age 30 where I said, you know what, I need to step back from this. And putting my fate in somebody else's hands, their decisions, felt to me like putting all my eggs in one basket, and I didn't want to do that anymore. So I felt at the time that I had, and this is in 2003, so this was kind of after the dot-com bubble, if you will, and there was a lot of turmoil in the market. And so I felt, you know what, I have as good of a chance on my own figuring this out and starting what I started as a small marketing business, as I do, going and putting my fate in someone else's hands yet again. And so that's 16 or so years later, 17 years later, I like to say I'm proudly unemployable at this point. Going to work for somebody and having someone tell me what to do, frankly, just sounds terrible to me. Um, so, so yeah, that's what set me on my first path. And like a lot of folks, entrepreneurship, it's not that I had some big idea and went and raised millions of dollars and changed the face of the hotel industry or the taxi industry, right? I just took a skill that I had and kind of hung out a shingle, so to speak, and met folks and started a business. And I had that business for 8 years. It was called Perspective Marketing. We did mostly marketing strategy work for small to mid-sized companies in the service sector. So anything that was a referral-based type of business. So banking, I worked quite a bit in banking, financial services, real estate, attorneys, CPAs, anything that was a referral-based type of business. And then taught college part-time on the side while I did that for fun. It was something after I got my MBA, and I did a lot of student teaching while I was getting my MBA. I really enjoyed that, and so ended up teaching just a class or two a quarter over the course of 8 years while I had my business. And then the idea for Hera Hub came because I worked at home. I ran my business out of my house. I mean, we're all privy to that now, right? We're all working and studying from home. And so this trend of co-working spaces, which just really starting in 2010, WeWork launched in 2010. It was this, executive suites have been around forever. Regis and those types of office centers, they're selling privacy. Co-working spaces are selling community. And so really started to dig into the world of co-working spaces as it was just coming out in 2010 and saw a gap in the market. Inventing something brand new is tough, right? Uber didn't invent anything new. They just saw a gap in the market. They saw a problem that wasn't being solved. And it's in that gap, I referred to this at the beginning, that really defines who you are. And so look for that gap. There's always a market segment that's not being addressed or being ignored or not being served well. Find that market. We always say there's riches and niches, and so be really focused on finding that group of people that's not being served well and address them. That's really all you need to start a business.
So you quoted, I think, Stephen Jobs. Your time is limited. Don't live someone else's life. That's a very powerful statement. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what that has meant to you in your development?
Yeah, I mean, what that quote means to me is don't compare yourself to other people. And this is a huge problem we have. And I blame it on social media, a big part of it, frankly. I mean, it's all about putting yourself out there and presenting yourself in a certain way and, making sure people see your best side and showing them that, everything you're doing is great, which is not true, right? We're all going through stuff, right? I mean, things happen, and that's not what we're showing on a lot of our social channels. I mean, filters and on and on. So, I think it's, how many of you seen The Social Dilemma that just came out? Hopefully you have. I mean, that's not the first movie that is, portrayed social media in that way. But I know a lot of folks watched it, and you have to be you. And comparing yourself to others and saying, well, I haven't gotten as far as that person, or you have no idea what's going on in their life. You never know what's going on in somebody's life. And give yourself a break, give other people a break, and quit comparing yourself to others. You are who you are, and be proud of that, and don't worry about what other people are doing. I mean, that's, no offense to education at all, but I mean, that's the way our education system is built is, what's your grade, and let's compare grades, and we're on a curve. And, I mean, that's built into our DNA as well. And we just have to give ourselves a break and step back from that.
I was pretty impressed with the way you came up with, I think. So I'm interested in the story on how Flight Club
Yes.
evolved. And can you share with us, that story?
Yeah. So, we all have a story, and hopefully you all write a book someday about your story. It is a time-consuming process, but it's worth it. And so, over the years, I had a few folks like, you have an interesting story. You should write your story. And I finally decided to do that, not with the intention to sell a million books or make a bunch of money. It was just more so. I think it's important for people to share their story and to connect with other people around that story. So the book title, Flight Club. So I know some of you might not have been born at this point, but in the early 90s, there was a movie that Brad Pitt was in and Ed Norton starred in called Fight Club. It is a bit of a cult classic, so maybe you've seen it. If you haven't, you may want to. There's several, storylines in the book, but one of the main storylines is Ed Norton is working in this really dismal, boring company, sitting in a gray cubicle day after day, and he feels like there's no meaning in life. He says, I'm a copy of a copy of a copy. And so he seeks out something different in his life, which happened to be Brad Pitt and Fight Club. So I'm not, advocating for fighting in any way, but this idea of being stuck and wanting to experience something more, that movie had an impact on me when I watched it. And so, hearkening back to my entrepreneurial roots of selling peacock feathers and this idea of taking flight into entrepreneurship, kind of jumping off the cliff, so to speak. So when I did my book launch, I actually paraglided off of Torrey Pines for the first time, just for fun, just to kind of, this context of taking flight. So I mean, that basically it was a play off of Fight Club. So Flight Club, Hera Hub has been referred to as a bit of a club, so to speak, a community type of scenario. And so being part of something, having that sense of community and support system as you jump off the cliff, so you're not just jumping off the cliff without that supportive network around you, is the context for Flight Club. So Rebel, Reinvent, and Thrive, How to Launch Your Dream Business is the subtitle of the book. So it's, it's about that journey, not only my journey, but I share the stories of other entrepreneurs and their journeys. And then after teaching entrepreneurship for 8 years at the college level, I was frustrated. There's 8 million how to write a business plan books out there. And the text we had to use for the class I taught, which I thought was not the best textbook, but that was what was mandated. I saw so many over the last 9 years, I've seen so many people just get so tangled up in the process of launching a business. They jump kind of from step 1 to 7 back to 2 and miss steps. And, there is a sequence to it, right? Figuring out your name and then registering it and getting your business license and setting up your books correctly and all these things that are kind of the boring stuff that people, they just want to go market and sell. So I built a 17 foundational step process called stepstostartup.com as part of the book. And it's an online course. Now I've had about 1,300 people go through that over the last few years. And I teach the class here and again on weekend boot camps. And I've done it a few times for the Women's Business Center, which is part of the Small Business Development Center.
So let me ask you, Felena, you talked about work-life balance and you gave a memorable phrase about what it means to you. Perhaps you can share that with the students right now. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So we talk about this concept a lot, just in general in business of, work-life balance, whether you work for somebody else or you work for yourself. And I don't necessarily agree with that, meaning not that I don't agree that you should have work-life balance, but these are two sort of polarizing ideas of, I have work over here and I have life over here. And, somehow I have to, teeter totter them back and forth on a daily basis. That's challenging, right? And we've all seen this through COVID, especially, has highlighted a lot of that. The balance of these things is very challenging. So what I personally has worked for me better is how can I integrate all those things together? So it's work-life integration, not work-life balance. So again, I've been lucky that I've been able to design my business, to suit who I am and what I like to do. So, the balance of, friendships and events and activities and social things. And I really was able to pull all those things together for the most part, even travel. I mean, I love to travel. I've been to 27 countries. I have another 50 on my list. This year has killed me because obviously no one's been able to go anywhere. I was able to work in my first flight club retreat. We went to Greece. I took a small group of women to Greece to see the Temple of Hera at Olympia and, travel around. We've been to Sweden. I took a group to Sweden and we ended up setting up a location in Sweden. So I look forward to 2021 and beyond, where we can get back to some of that adventure and bringing that adventure into our lives and the lives of others as well. So I just wrapped that into my business.
Are women entrepreneurs the same the world over? Are there any fascinating cultural differences that you have noticed that you can share with us? There are many global business students too among our student body.
Yeah, as it relates to entrepreneurship, this is not true of all countries, of course, so I can't blanket statement this, but a lot of what I've seen is we're lucky in a lot of ways in regards to how we think of entrepreneurship and the value of small business ownership. I mean, the US started as a rebel, scrappy, country, so to speak, right? And so, we've kind of carried that into, how we run businesses now to some extent. So, and the world of technology has really helped as well. So this idea of, the lean business model, innovate, deliver, iterate, pivot, that we've all grown to know over the last 15, 20 years because of the world of technology has really seeped into every aspect of our business. So this idea of taking risk is, for the most part, not everybody's comfortable with that, but it is pretty pervasive here in the US. Yeah, let's try it, go do it, raise some money, go figure it out, scrappy, let's, Google it, you'll figure it out type of thing. That is not the case in every country. And in Sweden in particular, where we were, definitely not the case. I mean, they're much more cautious culture, which we talked a lot about, that it was ironic because they're also a country that takes care of their people, healthcare and education. And so it's almost seems ironic because why wouldn't they take a risk, right? I mean, if I fall down, I've got healthcare, I've got education, I've got things covered, I have a net, so to speak, where we don't have that as much here. But it's not in their culture. This idea of failing is not in their vocabulary. It's what would people think of me if I failed and I tried something, right? Definitely different culturally. And we had a couple friends down in Australia, and I know there's a number of countries that have this philosophy and use this this phrase of not being a tall poppy, not standing out from the crowd, right? That is very American as well. It's like, here I am, I'm on social media, look at me, I'm building my brand, I'm, YouTube and all these things that we've created to help people, be their own brand. That is very American as well.
That is fascinating because it validates many of the things that I talk about and have written about with cross-cultural differences. And it's, you always wonder if they are just stereotypes, but in reality, so I'm always checking when I meet people from other cultures, so America is one of the most uh, innovative and risk embracing countries in the world, and people are not afraid to fail. That's why entrepreneurship really thrives in this country. It's that go west young person and go. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Brooke. Again, thank you for sharing this time with us. It is an amazing experience. And I really am inspired by your strength to persevere through rough circumstances. You know, a lot of people could take the other choice and go backwards rather than forwards. So I think that's really inspiring. And I know you talked a little bit about this, about having your dad be a role model and a couple of other people that you wrote about. But my question is, were you inspired by a specific role model growing up? And did this role model influence the importance of women succeeding and creating their own business?
Yeah, I mean, it really would come back to my parents. I know that's not, you know, probably the most creative answer, but you know, I talked a little bit about my dad and his work ethic. My mom too. I mean, I have to give her a lot of credit. My parents were, that's why I say rebel. My parents were rebels. I mean, they did not play by the rules. Like I said, they both dropped out of college their junior year to marry each other. My dad started a business and my mom started, you know, a variety of things. And my mom is scrappy. I mean, she's a fighter and she's very creative and can build something out of nothing. And so that, you know, both my parents really, really influenced that. And I would say my mom, as I like to call her an entrepreneur. Again, she's very creative. She currently has a jewelry business in the Midwest, where she makes her own jewelry. But, you know, this idea of not playing by the rules, doing what you want. You know, there was never like you go to college, you get a master's degree, you get a job, you know, do the thing, you buy the house, you have the, like, none of that was at all part of the agenda. Life is, I think, should be an adventure. I think there should be many chapters. I mean, I've had many chapters in my life, and I talk to people about this all the time. People, you know, I failed at this, you know, my marriage failed, this failed, you know, and like, that's a chapter, you know, appreciate that chapter in your life, what you learned, the experiences you have. That doesn't mean you have to set that behind you and totally forget about it. Then go to the next chapter and have your next adventure. That's what is, for me, what makes life worth living.
Felena, thanks again for coming. Mike, so you talked about a lot of, you know, entrepreneurship and not wanting to work in a cubicle, you know, and not responding to a boss or whatever. So being this a course of becoming a better leader and being yourself, you know, being a leader of yourself, what is one characteristic that you believe every leader should possess?
It's a couple things. Number one, it's listening. I think I try to talk as little as possible when we get into environments where we're together and, you know, we're having meetings and things of that nature. I really, even if I think I know the answer or want, you know, everybody else to to look at my answer, I always try to speak last and listen as much as possible. Lift is another one. So listen and lift. Just doing everything I can to build confidence in my team. You know, throughout the last 9 years, I've had, you know, younger team members and older team members. I think, you know, I will say this, I think women are not as confident as we should be. We men, just by and large, have a little more intrinsic, you know, kind of motivation. Women, I think, are taught at a young age, unfortunately, and now it's kind of gotten worse with social media, to have this more extrinsic, you know, what do people think of me? Look at me, you know, this more outward in sort of perspective. And so, you know, I do whatever I can to kind of lift up my team members and you know, encourage them and give them praise and, you know, tell them they're awesome and, you know, give them feedback as much as I can, but really try to lift them up. And the last thing is just being willing to do the grunt work myself. I'm not going to ask anyone in my business to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. So mean, people make fun of me all the time. I'll be walking around on a Friday afternoon, Hera Hub, like doing touch-up paint on the walls. I mean, I kid you not. Or cleaning the carpet on the weekend, or whatever it takes to make the business run. I'm not going to ask somebody else to do that if I myself am not willing to do that.
Hi, Felena. Thank you so much for being here with us. I've really enjoyed hearing about you so far. So my question is, what advice would you give to the next generation of female leaders? And then also, what are some great qualities you see amongst aspiring female leaders, and what qualities do you think aspiring female leaders in our generation can improve on?
Yeah, so I'll kind of go backwards, I guess, and you can direct me if I'm answering the way that you're looking for in this answer. But I'll point to what I just said again: is women need to be more confident. Period. Sorry, I'm just going to say it as plainly as I can.
True.
And there's been a lot of studies on this. There was an internal study with Hewlett Packard where internal movements within the company, applying for different roles within the company, and men would apply for jobs that they were, maybe 60% qualified for, all the bullets that, the qualifications. And we're like, I got a little half for this. I'm going to apply for this job, right? And women would go down the line of the job quality, and they're like, oh, I don't have all these. I'm not going to apply for this job, right? So it's a really good, kind of closed case study to show that, again, these are stereotypes, not always the case, but, hey, if you're even 40% qualified for that job, go for it, right? Figure out somebody that works there and go make friends with them and see if they can get you in the door. Like, that's how this works, guys. I mean, you got to pull some strings. You got to ask for some favors. Like, that's how the world works. So this idea that you have to play by the system and, submit your application and hope and wait and pray that they, follow up with you. You got to go for it and you got to figure it out. And that's, as somebody who hires, and this is not your question, but I'll just speak to it for a second, as someone who hires, I want somebody who's going to be scrappy and figure it out. And when they come in for an interview, I want them to have done their homework and on the business, on me, and tell me why they're passionate about what the work we are doing here, right? I don't want somebody who wants a job. I want somebody who's passionate about the business and passionate about our mission. And I don't care if you don't have any degrees, right? I just want to know that you are interested and you're willing to do the work. So interest and motivation and attitude are 10 times more important to me than even skill set, frankly. I mean, I can teach anybody almost anything. It's a matter of, are they willing to learn and are they eager to learn? And I've made some good hiring choices and I've made some bad hiring choices. And a lot of times it comes down to attitude.
What are some great qualities you see amongst aspiring female leaders in our generation? I think that was a little bit that's needed.
Yeah, I'll end with just back to that question of, I think women, again, are natural community builders. We're natural connectors. And so use that in your leadership. Like, it ties into what I said, build community, bring people together, just be that person. You don't need permission, right? You want to create something, just go create it, build it. And again, set the big, hairy, audacious goal, and those who want to come along do, and those who don't won't. And I will tell you, even if your goal doesn't work out. So I set a goal when I founded Hera Hub back in 2011 to support over 20,000 women in the launch and growth of their business by the end of 2020. I fell short of that. I'm going to be totally candid. I didn't hit 20,000. We really, at the beginning of 2020, end of 2019, through Hera Hub and the book and a couple of our sort of sister entities, we've reached over 13,000 individuals and supporting them in either the launch and growth of their business. That's a far cry short of 20,000, but you know what? So what? Okay, I didn't hit it. But putting that number out there, I mean, I can't tell you how many people, when I had to have a conversation with a licensee, they're like, I want to be a part of that. I want to be part of, you know, helping 20,000 women launch or grow their business. And that's leading, not selling. I didn't have to convince them to go open a Hera hub in Washington, D.C. They just wanted to be a part of that.
When you're kind of like stuck in your life and you're deciding like this is like a pivot point, I need to do something different, what gets you like, what gets the ball rolling? Are there certain questions that you ask yourself, or do you like take stock of like what's happening in your life?
Yeah, I mean, just speaking to the way I would approach that question, not any magic in this, but you know, where it all starts on where you're going, right? Where do you really want to be, and understanding how to answer that question, right? Like, what makes you happy? What makes you bounce out of bed every morning? What gets you excited to face every day? And if you know the answer to that question and then you analyze where you're at and you're not excited to jump out of bed every morning, the things you're doing, I sometimes like to say, if you get lost in it, right? And you know that feeling, you know, if you love to do research and you just, you know, you get so excited when you have to do a project and it's this ton of research and you just get lost in it for hours, right? Like, if you can get lost in something, that's a pretty good indication that it's working for you. If it's on your to-do list and it just remains on your to-do list for weeks and weeks and weeks and you keep ignoring it, also a pretty good indication, not what you want to do. So I think it's just basically knowing where you're going and why, and then being able to say, well, this isn't working for me. I need to make a change or a shift in my life, and having, you know, I'll just say it bluntly, the balls to do it, right? Like, to say like, okay, this is not where I want to be. And, you know, just asking yourself, what's the worst thing that can happen, right? What's the worst thing that can happen if I decide to just up and leave this job, or up and leave this relationship, or, you know, whatever it is. I mean, there's a lot of things that we get stuck in that we don't really know why we're stuck in it. And the worst thing, that just ask yourself that question, what's the worst thing that can happen? And usually it's not that bad, right? And you just have to say, I gotta do it. I gotta make a change. I've gotta, you know, life is too short, frankly. I mean, that's the blessing of, you know, some of the things that I've been through is, you know, not to sound morbid, but we don't know what tomorrow could bring. And I think especially this year has really brought that front and center for a lot of us. Life is way too short to be stuck in that job you don't like, or that relationship that's not healthy for you or right for you. Just turn the next page into the next chapter, right? It's okay. Like, that's an experience you had, value it, and you know, have have the courage to create that next chapter.
Thank you very much. I love what you said about the chapters, and I think that's the perfect analogy to life and on how to move on and get ready for the exciting things that could be happening, you know?
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Of course.
All right, thank you so much, Felena. It's been very great to listen to you and your advices about leadership and about moving on in life. Um, my mom has 17 siblings,
Wow.
and she's the oldest one.
Oh my goodness.
My mom is being the president of my world, and for many of us,
Yeah.
um, she's a woman with a lot of confidence, and she fights really hard for what she wants. And even when we tell her, my older brothers tell her, and my uncles tell her, you don't need to do anything. She always wants to do something. She opened her little store, like,
Yeah.
and she always doing something. And for me, because she's such a very confident woman, and I see that, like you said, there are a lot of females, they lack in confidence. What are your hopes about for after a woman being elected as a vice president of United States?
Yeah. yeah, this is a historic moment we are in right now, and you know, it's again cliche, but if you can't see it, you can't be it, right? And you know, we're way behind. I mean, there are, I don't know, 80 or so countries that have had, you know, a female prime minister or some, you know, woman in that top or second to the top position within a country. I mean, we are way, way, way behind in that regard. So I think it's huge. I mean, I'm excited about it, and nonetheless, you know, not only a woman but a woman of color and mixed cultures, and you know, so many exciting things about that. So, and you know, not to get political, but you know, we're seeing much more diversity come into the choices that the next administration is making, which again, you know, you can see it, you can be it.
So in your book, you mentioned that there are 23 signs you may be ready for entrepreneurship. I'm not going to ask you for all 23, but what would be your top 5 that you could share with these students?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you, let me just say this first, like not everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur. I'm just going to be blunt about it, right? Like it's not right for everybody. So I know that it's popular, thanks to Shark Tank, maybe. And I know that a lot of folks want to go down that path, but it isn't for everybody. So, you know, if you find yourself, you know, kind of frustrated with the way things are done and you have an idea to do it better, if you don't like to follow the rules, frankly, I mean, I think you have to be a bit of a rebel to some extent, and if you know, feel like you're scrappy enough, and I use that word very fondly, I mean, you have to be willing to kind of be a little gritty as an entrepreneur, and scrappy and figure it out, and kind of put the pieces together if you're willing to do that. And you've got to set yourself up. I just want to be honest. Like if you, I mean, let's just talk about the elephant in the room. How many of you have debt from, you know, from college, from your education? You know, when you leave school with that debt, that's a challenge, right? I mean, it makes it a bit harder to say, well, I'm just going to go, you know, do my thing and create my own business versus going to get that, you know, somewhat stable job where I can start to chip away and pay down my debt. So as much as possible, if you can put yourself in a position of, and I'm not saying live with, you know, with less necessarily, but in some cases, yeah, like don't get Uber Eats every day. You know, make your lunch, like don't go shop online, you know, like you've got to be a little bit scrappy in your personal life, like set yourself up that you can, you know, save some money and set yourself up that you can give yourself a little cushion to start that business. Going to raise capital is very challenging, especially in this environment. I mean, I raised a bit of capital in my business 2 years into the business after I was profitable. And I got an amazing deal, right? Because I was able to show profitability in the business, I had to give away very little of my business in order to gain an angel investor. So bringing on an investor in your business right out of the gate is next to impossible unless you have, you know, this, you know, amazing idea that and a ton of a connection. So you've got to set yourself up for success in launching your business, and side launch your business, right? Do it, you know, while you're in school, while you have a job, test it, you know, do whatever you can to get it out there, get the brand out there, and then jump off the cliff once you've got a little money saved and you feel confident that you have a market that is going to actually pay for your product or service.
Excellent, excellent, Felena. Great perspective and great advice, quite frankly.
And we couldn't have asked for a better guest to close out our year, especially in such a difficult year, with that powerful message and the advice that you've been giving. Thank you so much for sharing that, your wisdom and your time with us. And I do hope, you know, when we're really good, we ask we pester the guests and ask them back. So I hope you'll come back next year to one of our classes or to one of our events on campus. So I'm really hoping that you will come and inspire even more people in the future. I mean, you're such a terrific role model for everybody. So thank you so much on behalf of Miguel and myself, the team today, and the entire class and our executive chair programs.